The monitor flatlined with a piercing shriek as Dr. Chen collapsed on the operating floor, blood seeping through her surgical gown. Not from the patient, from herself. "Someone help her," a nurse screamed as chaos erupted in operating room 3. The renowned cardiac surgeon who had been performing a life-saving transplant seconds earlier was now fighting for her own life, an aneurysm having ruptured without warning. The patient on the table and the doctor saving him were now both hovering between life and death, connected by the cruel irony of timing. James Westbrook burst through the hospital doors, having received an urgent call about his scheduled heart surgery being reassigned after the primary surgeon suffered a medical emergency. The billionaire tech mogul had pulled strings to get the best surgeon in the country for his procedure. Now he stood frozen in the hospital corridor, staring at the gurney racing past. The woman being rushed to emergency surgery was unquestionably Mia, the same woman who'd walked out of his life a decade ago, taking his heart with her. The same woman about to operate on that very heart today. Their eyes locked for just a second before she lost consciousness, but the recognition in her gaze was unmistakable. "Sir, you need to wait in the lounge," a staff member urged, but James couldn't move. How could the universe be this cruel? The only woman he'd ever truly loved might die before he could tell her he never stopped searching for her. The waiting room became James's prison for the next 6 hours. His own surgery postponed indefinitely, his mind raced with questions. Why had Mia changed her name? Why was she in this hospital, scheduled to operate on him of all people? And most importantly, would she survive the emergency surgery to repair her ruptured cerebral aneurysm? A decade of building his tech empire into a billion-dollar business suddenly meant nothing. All his wealth couldn't guarantee her survival, and that terrified him more than his own deteriorating heart condition. James paced the sterile corridor, memories flooding back of their last night together. The candlelit dinner where he'd proposed, her tearful acceptance, the plans they'd made for a future that never materialized. The next morning, she was simply gone, apartment emptied, phone disconnected, as if she'd never existed. His private investigators found nothing, as though she'd vanished into thin air. Now, the universe had orchestrated this cruel reunion, with both their lives hanging in the balance. His hand unconsciously moved to his chest, feeling the irregular beat that had brought him here in the first place. "Mr. Westbrook?" The surgeon who emerged looked exhausted but offered a cautious smile. "Dr. Chen is stabilized. It was touch and go, but she's fighting. However, I should inform you that you're listed as her emergency contact in our system." "Can you explain that?" James felt the room spin. "That's impossible. I haven't seen Mia in 10 years. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. She had kept him as her emergency contact all this time. The mystery deepened when the surgeon handed him a sealed envelope from Mia's personal effects, marked, "For James, if anything ever happens to me." His hands trembled as he took it, feeling the weight of unspoken words inside. 2 days later, James sat beside Mia's hospital bed, the letter's contents having turned his world upside down. When she finally opened her eyes, he saw recognition, then fear, then resignation cross her face. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That our daughter exists? That you left because Elliot Blackwood threatened to destroy my company if you didn't?" James's voice cracked with emotion. 10 years, Mia. 10 years of searching for you." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "He promised he would ruin you completely if I ever contacted you. When I discovered I was pregnant after our engagement ended, he made it clear what would happen if I didn't disappear." She struggled to sit up. "Sophia is 9 now. She has your eyes and your stubborn determination." James felt his damaged heart constrict with a pain no surgery could fix. "Where is she now?" "With my sister in Boston. She thinks her father died before she was born." Mia's voice broke. "I never wanted to lie to her, but Blackwood's reach is nowhere near as powerful as mine is now," James interrupted, taking her hand. "Blackwood Industries is a shell of what it was. I bought controlling interest 3 years ago and didn't even know I was dismantling the company of the man who stole my family. The revelation hung between them like a lifeline, the first tenuous thread reconnecting their severed past. But as Mia's monitors began beeping erratically, a nurse rushed in. Her pressure spiking. "You need to leave, sir." James was ushered out as doctors flooded the room, leaving him with the gut-wrenching fear that he might lose her all over again, just when he'd found her. "The swelling in her brain has increased," Dr. Peterson explained the next morning. "We need to induce a coma to give her brain time to heal, but there's something you should know." He hesitated, his expression grave. Dr. Chen was aware of her aneurysm. She'd been monitoring it for years but postponed her own treatment to continue performing surgeries, including yours, Mr. Westbrook. She knew the risks. She was going to operate on me knowing she could collapse at any moment. James felt both horrified and moved beyond words. She insisted. "When she saw your name on the schedule 3 months ago, she requested your case personally. She said, she owed you that much." James staggered to the nearest chair, overwhelmed. While he'd been building empires and hunting for her, Mia had been carrying the dual burdens of raising their daughter alone and working with a ticking time bomb in her brain. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the city, James pulled out the letter again. Mia's handwriting was precise, just as he remembered, the elegant script of the brilliant medical student he'd fallen for at a charity gala. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me," the letter began. "First, know that leaving you was never my choice. Second, you have a daughter who deserves to know her father. And third, I've kept every letter you never received, every birthday card you couldn't send her, every moment we should have shared, documented in journals that my sister will give you. I never stopped loving you, James. Not for a single day." He wept then, for the first time since his father's death. For the decade lost, for the milestones missed, for the love that had endured despite impossible circumstances. By morning, his resolve had crystallized into absolute determination. He would reunite his family, consequences be damned. As days stretched into weeks, James divided his time between Mia's bedside and video calls with a suspicious 9-year-old girl in Boston who had no idea he was her father. His own heart condition deteriorated as he refused to leave the hospital for his scheduled surgery, unwilling to be unconscious if Mia's condition changed. The nurses began to recognize him, the billionaire who slept in an uncomfortable chair, who brought fresh flowers daily to a woman who couldn't see them, who read aloud from medical journals because he remembered how she used to fall asleep studying them. His assistant delivered stacks of company documents that went unread as James focused entirely on the two people who mattered most, the woman fighting for her life and the daughter he'd only just discovered. It was during one such video call that Sophia's innocent question shattered his careful facade. "Why do you visit my mom every day? Did you love her?" The child's directness, so reminiscent of his own, caught him off guard. "I still do," he answered honestly, forgetting his rehearsed caution. "I never stopped." "Then why weren't you there when I was born?" Sophia demanded, her eyes, his eyes, flashing with hurt and curiosity. The line went silent as James struggled for words. Behind him, a weak voice said, "Because I never told him about you, sweetheart." James whirled to find Mia awake, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the tablet screen showing their daughter. The moment suspended in time, father, mother, and child connected across distance and secrets for the first time. Elliot Blackwood arrived at the hospital the following week, his aging face twisted with the same malice that had separated the young couple a decade earlier. "I warned you what would happen if you contacted him," he snarled at Mia, unaware that James was just outside the door. "Everything I built, everything I protected you from, was built on lies and threats," James finished, stepping into the room. "Game over, Elliot. I've known for years that you falsified those research results and blamed my father, driving him to suicide. What I didn't know was that you'd threatened Mia to keep her silent." Blackwood's face drained of color as he realized he was cornered. "You have no proof." Actually, Mia said quietly, I do. It's why I kept running all these years. I was gathering evidence, building a case that could withstand your lawyers and money. I never stopped fighting for justice, for James, for his father, and for our daughter. Blackwood lunged forward, desperation making him dangerous. You think anyone will believe you? A surgeon with brain damage and a man blinded by sentiment? His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. I destroyed your father when he discovered my pharmaceutical data was falsified. I'll destroy you too. The difference, James said evenly, is that my father stood alone. We don't. He nodded toward the doorway where a distinguished woman in a prosecutor's suit stood observing. Meet District Attorney Helena Rivera. She's been building a case against you for years. Mia's evidence was the final piece. The security team James had stationed at the hospital appeared at the door, accompanied by federal agents. As Blackwood was escorted out, the bitter old man looked back with venom. You'll regret this. Both of you. The only regret I have, James said firmly, is that it took me 10 years to find her again. When they were alone, Mia's professional composure finally crumbled. I wanted to contact you so many times. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time Sophia asked about her father. James sat beside her, taking her hand. Why did you agree to do my surgery? You must have known the risk. Mia's smile was tinged with sadness. Because your heart needed healing, and I'm the one who broke it. It seemed fitting that I should be the one to fix it. My heart has only ever needed one thing to heal, James said softly, and it wasn't surgery. 3 months later, James stood nervously in the garden of his lakeside estate, adjusting his tie as guests found their seats. His best friend Mark clapped him on the shoulder. Not too late to run, you know. I did that once, came Mia's voice as she approached, stunning in a simple white dress. Worst mistake of my life. At her side, Sophia beamed, proudly holding a basket of flower petals, finally knowing the truth about her father and thriving in the love of both parents. Behind them stood Dr. Peterson, who had not only saved Mia's life but had successfully performed James's postponed heart surgery 6 weeks earlier. Mia's recovery had been challenging, physical therapy to regain her surgical precision, cognitive exercises to ensure her brilliant mind remained intact. James had been there for every appointment, every frustration, every small victory. And Sophia had proven to be her mother's daughter, fierce and determined, organizing James's medication schedule with military precision while he recuperated from his own surgery. Their healing had happened together, 3 separate lives knitting into one family, making up for lost time with movie nights and breakfast pancake battles, with science experiments that sometimes ended in minor kitchen disasters, with quiet conversations that stretched into the night as they rebuilt the foundation that had been stolen from them. Ready to try again? James asked, extending his hand to Mia. She laced her fingers through his, her engagement ring, the same one from 10 years ago, which he'd never returned, catching the sunlight. Some love stories are worth waiting for, she replied, even if they take a scenic route through heartbreak. As they walked toward their long-delayed future together, the gathered guests rose to their feet. Among them were Mia's medical team, James's loyal employees, and most importantly, Sophia's new school friends, who had been told the remarkable story of how her parents found each other again against impossible odds. The officiant, a judge who had overseen Blackwood's conviction just weeks earlier, smiled as they approached. Today isn't just about a wedding, she began, it's about justice, perseverance, and the kind of love that refuses to die even when the world conspires against it. James reflected on how close they'd come to losing everything, twice. Their journey had taught him that true wealth wasn't measured in billions but in second chances, and that some hearts, once connected, find their way back to each other against all odds. Thank you for never giving up, Mia whispered as they reached the altar where they should have stood a decade earlier. James smiled, his heart, now physically and emotionally healed, full of certainty. Some things, he said softly, are worth fighting for forever. As they exchanged vows beneath a canopy of white flowers, Sophia between them holding both their hands, they knew their story wasn't just about a second chance at love, but about healing wounds that had seemed impossible to mend, about a family reclaiming the decade that had been stolen from them, and about the unbreakable resilience of hearts that refuse to forget each other, no matter how much time or distance comes between them.